In early October, the ExoMars Trace gas orbiter returned a tiny, jittering dot that moved against the stars near Mars. Scientists called it 3I Atlas, the third known interstellar visitor, racing at roughly 210,000 kilometers per hour. The images were faint. The anticipation was not. A close solar pass was expected near the end of the month, then the object would slip behind the sun before returning to view later in the year. The tension grew as the data thinned. Reports stacked up. One outlet described the approach to Mars and hinted at a size between 5 and 11 kilometers. Another noted unusual polarization and an anti-tail in early studies. A few voices wondered out loud if nature could fully account for everything we were seeing. Most researchers kept the conversation anchored to comet physics and the record of 2 earlier interstellar objects. The rest of us waited and refreshed our feeds. Meanwhile, a quieter story had already begun. On September 11th, an amateur from Ukraine, Vladimir Bezugli, combed through public images from the SWAN instrument on the Soho spacecraft. He noticed a dim point that brightened faster than background noise. It was soon designated C2025R2, better known as SWAN. The discovery entered logs with calm precision, then drifted under the radar while headlines kept circling 3I Atlas. These details did not line up in a neat row. One object was dramatic by category and rare by origin. The other was gentle, rising beyond the glare near the sun. Together they formed a puzzle of attention. Here, we untangle that puzzle without rushing, and we let the facts and the sky find their own voice. So, before our journey begins, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you feel a genuine connection to the mysteries we explore here. And please, let us know your location and the time when you are. These small markers on the map make our quiet community feel closer, even across oceans and deserts. Now dim the lights, let the world outside fade away, and let's drift into the cosmos together. We begin at the edge of certainty, where numbers arrive in short bursts and expectations fill the gaps. The sky is patient. We try to be as well. The countdown did not start with a clock. It started with mood. Astronomers and onlookers settled into the long, alert pause that follows a headline discovery. 3I Atlas drew our eyes because it had crossed a deep boundary. It was not from here. That single fact can pull a lot of story into its orbit. When the ExoMars orbiter glimpsed the object near Mars on October 3rd, the imagination took another step forward. A rare visitor, a possible large nucleus, a close brush with the sun, and then a blackout while it would pass behind our star. That sequence alone can act like a metronome for public attention. In that shared pause, something subtle happened. The world began to rehearse an image of what it wanted to see when 3I Atlas reappeared. We do this without thinking. A mind under suspense will sketch contours before the picture arrives. It is not a flaw. It is a way to feel prepared. For a rare interstellar object, preparation turns quickly into projection. A cascade of unresolved notes followed. One article emphasized that 3I Atlas might be larger than Borisov, perhaps 5 to 11 kilometers across, which would make activity easier to detect. Another discussed optical polarization that looked unusual at first glance, and the report of an anti-tail that seemed to reach toward the incoming direction. A familiar voice from Harvard floated a speculative angle about artificial origin, then tempered it in later comments. Even restrained speculation can ripple. The ripples travel faster than raw numbers. Pause with the numbers, just for one breath. Closest pass to Mars in early October. Speed on the order of 200,000 kilometers per hour. Solar approach near the end of October. Temporary loss behind the Sun, with ground telescopes resuming later in the year. Size estimates rounded to a few kilometers. Enough detail to hold, not enough to settle. Now let the image return. The night side of Mars below, the orbiter above, a faint point crossing a field of static stars. It is a modest picture, almost humble, yet it carries a very old thrill. We are watching something shaped far away move through our neighborhood. Even the quietest frame can carry that feeling. While the world adjusted its expectations, a different thread took shape. In public SWAN images, where the solar wind paints the background with soft noise, a small brightening emerged. Vladimir Bezugli flagged it on September 11th. C 2025 R2 would be its formal name. SWAN would be its simple one. The comet had been hidden by geometry and glare, then slipped around the curtain. On September 12th, it reached perihelion near half an astronomical unit, roughly 75 million kilometers, and began to open. These are ordinary words for an ordinary comet. They can still describe something quietly superb. The contrast between the two stories is the heart of this section. One object is rare by class and loud by association. The other is common by class and luminous by presence. Place them side by side and you do not get a competition. You get a mirror for how attention works. The shape of attention matters because it changes what gets measured. Telescopes have schedules. Time must be requested, justified, and approved. Public fascination can help, but it can also narrow the field. When 3i Atlas moved behind the Sun, many instruments could not see it, and the rest of us stared into the glare like sailors looking into fog. That is when rumor starts to sound like data. It is also when patience becomes a form of discipline. There is a useful calm in remembering what the earlier interstellar visitors taught. Oumuamua moved without a visible coma and left us with gentle puzzles about radiation pressure and shape. Borisov behaved like a textbook comet and reminded us that most foreign travelers will look familiar. 3i Atlas, so far, fits closer to that second story. If later images complicate the plot, we will fold them in. For now, the cleanest path is to let physics lead and let adjectives arrive last. Return to the sky for a moment. Think of binoculars cooling in an evening breeze. Think of a horizon where a new comet might sit, low and patient. We will spend time with SWAN soon. First, we sit with the mood that 3i Atlas set. Because mood shapes observation, the weight becomes a lens. It sharpens some edges and blurs others. One vivid picture stays with me from those early October days. A dark frame full of static stars. The ExoMars orbiter catching a faint movement that could have been a flaw if not for the second and third frames that confirmed it. The beauty is not in the brightness. It is in the confirmation that distant origins can still be touched by simple, steady measurement. Two firm facts, placed gently. 3i Atlas is an interstellar object with current evidence most consistent with a natural comet. C 2025 R2 was discovered in public SWAN data by an amateur on September 11th, then reached perihelion the next day near half an AU. One grounded speculation, kept honest by statistics. Our preference for the rare can bias what we notice in the common, even when the common glows green and grows a long, breathing tail. One open question to hold in the quiet. What else do we miss in the weeks when a single story fills the sky? We will not rush the answer. In the next chapter, we visit the SWAN discovery with the same care we gave to the countdown for 3i Atlas. The contrast is the point. The sky offers both at once. A quiet brightening appeared where most eyes never look. a patient increase across public maps that refresh like tides, and one watcher paused long enough to notice. The SWAN instrument was built to trace hydrogen in the solar wind. It paints the sky in soft gradients and speckled texture, a living weather map of space. Most nights, those maps flow past unnoticed, a background channel for professionals who track the sun and its rivers of particles. In early September, they also held something else. 1 pixel, then a few, began to rise above the wash. Picture the finder at a kitchen table or a small study. The lights are low. The screen shows a false color sky where bright patches drift like islands. An amateur astronomer named Vladimir Bezugli works through frames with the patience that only habit can teach. He is not chasing headlines. He is asking the same simple question that has guided a century of careful eyes. Is that point real, and is it getting brighter in a way that nature uses to speak? He checks again the next day. The point holds. It grows faster than the background. It moves as a body moves. The coordinates fit a path that comes out of glare, not into it. The quiet work becomes a signal. A report is made. The name arrives soon after, C/2025 R2, and the short, friendly word that sticks in the mind, SWAN. There is a dignity to discoveries that come from public data. The satellite does its slow sweep. The instrument refreshes. The images arrive where anyone can read them. What matters is time and attention. That is also what most of us are short of. So this discovery carries a special warmth. It says that beauty can live in a place where no one is pointing a spotlight. Now the geometry. The comet approached from a direction that pressed it close to the sun in our sky. Astronomers call it low elongation. The meaning is simple. When you look near the sun, you look through glare. Ground telescopes avoid that region because safety, atmosphere, and optics work against you. Spacecraft have their own constraints. A comet can slip through that narrow lane and step into view only after it rounds the bend. Clarity often arrives in a single breath of numbers. The first clear flag came on September 11. Perihelion followed around September 12. The distance at that closest sun approach sat near half an astronomical unit, about 75 million kilometers. After that, the path tilted outward and the phase angle softened. For a comet, those changes mean one thing. The show will reveal itself not in a rush at the sun, but in the days that follow, when heat pulls gas from the surface and the beam of reflected light separates cleanly from the glare. Hold the picture of the early frames. In false color, the comet is only a blemish on a sea of texture, yet the mind recognizes a signature. The increase is not random. It is not tied to solar patches or instrumental ghosts. It rises with the quiet confidence of sublimation. Sunlight warms fresh ices. Molecules fly away. The coma swells. The signal leaks past the background and becomes visible to a wider circle. 2 firm facts set the scene. The object that stole the headlines was 3I Atlas, an interstellar body, rare by origin and important by category. The object in these maps was SWAN, a comet, common by class and generous by behavior. Both deserve attention. Only one had a ready supply of it. That is not a criticism of the community. It is a sketch of how attention flows when rare events walk into the room. Between those facts sits a gentle speculation that respects the limits. If SWAN had entered the stage at a larger elongation, would the community have rallied sooner? Very likely yes. If 3I Atlas had been a routine comet from our own cloud, would every microphone have turned away? Very likely no. The difference is not physics. It is narrative gravity. We are human animals who feel the pull of the unusual. Even the most disciplined observers are not immune to it. The remedy is not scolding. The remedy is practice. Practice can be methodical. You check the same sources at the same hour every day. You scan the SWAN maps with a calm eye and a small note. You compare the frame to yesterday. You mark a rise that holds for at least 2 cycles. Then you ask a second watcher to look, without telling them what you hope they will see. In that routine, each person's bias is sanded down by someone else's quiet view. What does SWAN look like at this moment in the story? It is still small in the data. The coma is not yet a great lantern. The tail has not yet drawn a sweeping line you can trace with your finger. But there is something in the way the brightness climbs that makes veterans lean forward. They have learned the difference between a noisy uptick and a comet that is waking. The physical script that drives that waking is simple and lovely. Sunlight pours onto a rotating surface laced with volatile ices. Carbon compounds and water respond like sleepers stirred by dawn. Gas leaves in jets. Dust grains ride the flow. The coma becomes a soft atmosphere around the nucleus, hundreds of thousands of kilometers across when conditions are generous. The tail forms as the solar wind pushes small particles into a long stream. Chemistry writes its color. Carbon-based radicals can give a cool green hue to the head. Sodium and other elements can add a faint, pale wash. These are not fireworks, they are breath. Schedule pressure and instrument time can work against scenes like this. Proposal windows are set months in advance. Telescopes cannot turn on a whim. Even survey assets that scan the sky each night may miss a low-angle target, or flag it only when it steps into a safer field. That is why the amateur network remains vital. A plastic lawn chair and a pair of binoculars can still be a first responder for beauty. There is a second vivid image, this time outdoors. A courtyard under a white moon. The hum of city life at a distance. A small group of neighbors look up because one of them asked. That person carries a phone with a finder chart, a dog-eared atlas, and a story that is easy to tell. Something new has come around the sun and is heading our way. No need for drama. The draw is the idea that the sky is not a museum. It is alive, and it can change between one week and the next. A note about names, because names matter. 3i Atlas wears its origin in its label. Third interstellar object, found by a survey system designed to sweep. That name carries weight because it connects to a short, famous list. SWAN carries the name of an instrument that listens to the sun. One feels like a bookend on a shelf of rare volumes. The other feels like a friendly signature on a postcard. Our minds will always lift the bookend first. It helps to remember the postcard may show a view you do not want to miss. There is a small value in stepping back to the logic of discovery. Modern astronomy has a rich middle layer where professionals and amateurs collaborate in a steady dance. Survey telescopes find most things first. Public spacecraft data adds texture and timing. Amateurs confirm, refine, and sometimes they lead the way. SWAN's early notice fits that pattern with an elegance that is easy to admire. It is a reminder that the frontier is not only at the largest observatories, it is at any desk where someone cares enough to look twice. As the first week of September gives way to the second, the internal timeline of the comet quickens. Heat seeps deeper into the surface. Activity rises. Small changes in the pressure of outgassing begin to nudge the path in ways that are measurable but modest. The numbers are there for those who want them. A perihelion around half an astronomical unit. A closest sun distance around 75 million kilometers. A brightness that climbs in steps rather than leaps. That compact cluster is enough. Then the story returns to the image of a green head that is still to come. A gentle question closes this chapter. If a single, patient person can bring a hidden visitor into view by reading public maps with care, what else lies inside the slow currents of available data, waiting for anyone to listen long enough to hear? Sometimes the loudest story sets the rhythm, and the quiet one sets the tune. In the next chapter, the tune grows brighter. Before dawn on September 12, a comet turned the corner near the sun, released its breath, and almost no one on Earth looked up. Picture a pale ember skirting the solar glow. The sky near the sun is milk bright, a place where instruments flinch and human eyes surrender. In that glare, Swan bends through its closest approach, a small body warming fast, 1,000 quiet jets testing the vacuum like reeds in a current. The scene has the hush of a theater before the curtain, except the audience is outside getting coffee and reading updates about 3I Atlas. The physics of a comet at perihelion is simple and dramatic at once. Sunlight pours onto a dark, irregular surface. Pockets of ice, some older than our planets, cross a thermal threshold and begin to sublimate. Gas escapes, dust rides the flow, and the nucleus wears a soft atmosphere that reflects sunlight in all directions. What the eye sees afterward, when geometry allows, is a coma that looks like a lantern and a tail that points away like a long brushstroke. Pause for one compact breath of numbers. Perihelion around half an astronomical unit, about 75 million kilometers. A phase angle high enough to keep reflected light near the sun and out of easy reach. A likely magnitude that grows from the single digits into the middle ones, rounded and calm. Modest non-gravitational nudges from jets, small compared to the pull of the sun. That cluster is enough to set the stage, and then we return to imagery. Now picture the same moment from the perspective of a ground telescope scheduler. Point too close to the sun and heat can scar a detector or a dome slit. Point higher and the object is still hidden by angle. Observatory safety rules are written by past mistakes. Many knights have learned their lessons the hard way. A comet can cross perihelion without inviting a single exposure if geometry insists and policy agrees. A second image helps the mind settle. Think of a clean white room where a coronagraph studies the sun. The instrument is tuned for solar wind, not comets, yet the edges of its field hold traces of passing bodies. For a few frames, Swan is like a swimmer brushing the ropes of a pool, then slipping beyond the camera. The body moves. The wake is left behind. No applause, no headlines, only a line in a log that will make more sense later. Meanwhile, the story that owned the public square keeps rolling. 3I Atlas is behind the sun, or nearly so. Commentators trade cautious phrases about reappearance windows and what new images might show. A few voices ask whether this interstellar traveler will behave like Borisov, the previous comet from beyond our cloud, or surprise us with something stranger. That mood soaks into every conversation about the sky. It is hard not to lean toward the rare. This is where attention becomes a character in the narrative. Attention is not a villain. It is a beam that has to point somewhere. In September, it points at 3I Atlas, and because beams have width, some light still lands on Swan, but not much. The result is a scene that will look, in hindsight, like a private performance. A newcomer crossed the sun's neighborhood, released its breath, and built a halo of gas and dust that few noticed in real time. The mechanics on the comet continue without caring. As jets align with sunlight, they twist and untwist the nucleus with small torques. Grains lift from vents, then fall back or escape, depending on size and speed. Solar radiation shapes the tail into a long ribbon, faint at first, then clearer when the viewing angle softens. Chemistry begins to paint the coma. Light scattered by gas and dust sets the head glowing with the cool tint that carbon radicals can give. None of this requires surprise. All of it can still feel like magic. Two firm facts keep the moment grounded. On or about September 12, SWAN reached perihelion at about half an astronomical unit. At that time, because its elongation from the Sun was small, most ground-based instruments could not or would not point near it. A grounded speculation follows with a respectful tone. If an orbit with the same perihelion had placed the comet 30 degrees farther from the Sun in our sky, we likely would have seen a surge of attention and early photographs from backyard observers and small observatories. The physics would not change. The narrative would. There is a quiet thrill in imagining the first clean evening after perihelion, when the geometry finally helps instead of hinders. The comet is a little farther from the Sun in our sky, a little higher at dusk, a little safer for optics. That is when an ordinary pair of binoculars can start to matter. Not because the view is grand yet, but because the view is now possible. The larger lesson tucked inside this chapter is about pacing. Nature does not deliver a chorus at the exact hour we make room for it. SWAN uses heat and geometry as its metronome. Our calendars march by different beats. When those beats align, crowds gather. When they miss, the sky plays to an empty room. The performance is the same either way. The difference is the witness. Consider a small backyard in mid-September. Warm air holds the day a little longer. A person steps outside with a chart printed from a public site. The sun has set. The horizon still glows. They know the comet is there, deeper in the brightness than they can reach. They stay a few minutes longer than feels sensible, then go in and write a single line in a notebook. Wait 2 more nights. Try again. Patience is not a virtue in this story. It is a method. Why does this matter when another comet, tagged 3I Atlas, has captured so much imagination? Because the best way to meet the rare is to practice on the common. SWAN is not common in the sense of forgettable. It is common in the sense that comets like it visit often enough to build a craft around watching them. That craft does not depend on press cycles. It depends on the steady loop of looking, noting, and looking again. One more image marks the close of this arc. A low western sky, a thin crescent of light where the sun has gone, and above that a pale smudge that is not a cloud. It is only a hint of what will come when the coma grows and the tail stretches. Yet even this hint carries a promise. The promise is simple. Keep returning, and the faint will become clear. An open question carries us forward. When the crowd waited for 3I Atlas to reappear, and the instruments faced away from the sun, what subtle frames slipped by unfocused and unshared, and how many of them contained beauty that deserved a witness. The audience returns to their seats now. The curtain rises on color. Evening by evening, the small visitor thickens its glow, and a narrow ribbon lifts from its crown, a quiet sign that heat has reached deeper reservoirs. Imagine a low western sky in early dusk. Rooftops fade to silhouettes. Between 2 faint stars, a sea-green ember hangs, soft at the edges, with a pale straight streamer leaning away from the sun. The color is the first surprise for new eyes. It looks like something living. In truth, it is chemistry speaking in light. Comet wear their tint for simple reasons. When sunlight stirs carbon molecules, they shine in bands that the eye reads as green. Sodium can add a ghostly wash. Ionized gases flow into the tail and yield a colder blue that cameras see better than we do. Dust grains, larger and heavier, drift into a softer, curving plume that trails the path. To a patient observer, two tails may appear at once, the straight ion tail and the bent dust tail, each obeying a different rule. Hold the technical cluster in one calm breath. In the first clear week after perihelion, the coma can grow to hundreds of thousands of kilometers across. The ion tail can reach a few million kilometers. Surface temperatures on sunlit patches can warm above the frost line. Brightness may rise toward the naked eye threshold near magnitude 6, then hover. Modest, non-gravitational effects from jets can nudge the orbit, a small correction, not a rewrite. Then let the numbers go and return to the scene. Stand with binoculars braced on a fence. The comet steadies into view. The head is not a point, it has a soft core and a halo, like the glow around breath on a cold pane. A faint ray cuts from the head toward the darkening sky. If the solar wind is gusty, the ray kinks and snaps back to straight. If it is calm, the ray becomes almost ruler smooth. You can feel the sun's invisible river by watching how the tail behaves, a lesson printed nightly for those who look. Two grounded facts guide the eye. First, ion tails always point away from the sun because charged particles in the solar wind drag them outward along field lines. Second, dust tails tend to curve because larger grains keep some of the nucleus motion as they drift, and sunlight pushes on them more gently. Once those rules settle, the picture makes more sense. The straight thing is tied to the sun. The curved thing is tied to the comet. Now a careful speculation, kept close to evidence. The quick rise in the green coma after perihelion suggests fresh ices near the surface, perhaps recently exposed by small fractures. Such breaks can open when heating stresses the crust, or when a modest spin drives loose material from a ridge. If vents briefly align with sunlight, jets can switch on and off as the nucleus rotates, stitching faint striations into the tail. It is a natural choreography, carved by rotation and heat, not by intention. Listen to the rhythm that returns each evening. For a few nights, the comet rides lower, then edges higher by a finger width. For a few more, the color strengthens for binoculars and low-light cameras, then steadies. City observers report a smear that refuses to sharpen. Rural observers find the halo grows wider when the air is still. Cloud and smoke flatten the view. Clear, dry air lifts it. Every note is ordinary, and yet each feels like a small gift. The mind searches for comparisons because that is how it finds scale. Picture a dim teal candle inside a glass jar, the flame hidden, the jar glowing. Or think of plankton in shallow surf, swirled by an unseen tide. The comet is neither candle nor ocean, but the way light softens at the edge of the coma echoes both. A single bright star just beyond the halo helps the eye anchor what is faint. You wait. The shape clarifies. For many, this is the first comet that feels personal rather than historical. A short return to fundamentals keeps the story honest. The nucleus is likely only a few kilometers across. The coma makes it look larger than worlds. Gas leaves at hundreds of meters per second. Dust lifts more slowly. The ion tail responds in minutes to changes in the solar wind. The dust tail evolves over hours and days. The color comes from carbon radicals excited by sunlight. The glow fades with distance from the sun and the earth, unless new jets reignite activity. That is the whole playbook in one short paragraph. When the light is right, a camera on a simple tripod can show details hidden from the eye. A 10-second exposure gathers the tail like a brushstroke. A stacked set of short exposures rounds the coma and reveals a brighter core. Timestamps show the nucleus motion against the stars. A line on the comet and the stars become small trails. A line on the stars and the comet becomes a traveling smear. Both views tell the truth. The universe is moving in many frames at once. There is an imaginative thought that rises here, and we bow to it for a moment before returning to physics. The green head and the breathing tail look like an organism exhaling into space. If we let that image sit for a few heartbeats, it can help the scene feel close. Then we set it aside and say what it is. Volatile ices heated by sunlight become gas. Gas carries dust. The sun sculpts what leaves. Beauty needs no other purpose. The larger narrative in the background persists. Three Eyes Atlas remains hidden behind the sun or caught at angles that keep it out of easy reach. Speculation flows where measurements thin. Meanwhile, Swan asks for nothing louder than attention. The contrast between rumor and radiance is part of why this month feels instructive. The loud and the quiet are both present. Only one is in the eyepiece. If you draw the scene, a few rules make a reliable sketch. Place the sun just off the page to the right at dusk. Draw the comet as a soft circle a few finger widths above the horizon. Pull a straight line away from the sun for the ion tail. Then add a gentler curve along the path for dust. Label the coma with a single word, chemistry. Label the tails with another, wind. You now have a map simple enough to carry in your head when you step outside. A second vivid image settles this chapter. A quiet field, a thermos cup warm in one hand. The first geese of the season angle south. A friend or a child or a neighbor peers through binoculars and says they think they see it but are not sure. You pass the view back and forth until the doubt thins and the small green ember clicks into place. On the ride home, the conversation is not about rarity or class. It is about surprise. Two more facts, kept plain. The comet's color will likely fade as it recedes and the gas thins. The tail may seem longer after dusk when the sky darkens, even if the physical length does not change much. Perception is part of the instrument. We learn to calibrate it the same way we calibrate lenses, with patience and comparison. One question, left open on purpose. When beauty arrives in a register that asks for quiet attention instead of spectacle, how do we train our habits so that we do not look away? A story can float on wonder, but it steadies when the numbers arrive. Let's set them down in one clear place, then walk back into the dark. First, a single frame for Swan. Closest to the sun around September 12. Distance at perihelion near half an astronomical unit, roughly 75 million kilometers. Apparent brightness rising toward magnitude 6 in mid to late October under darker skies, then easing. Coma scale in the first strong week after perihelion climbing to a few 100,000 kilometers. Ion tail length measured in a few million kilometers, changing shape with the solar wind. Gas leaving the sunlit surface at a few 100 meters per second. Outgassing rates on the order of a few 100 kilograms each second at activity peaks, lower most nights. Non-gravitational accelerations present but small. A gentle nudge compared to the sun's pull. That cluster is enough to hold in a pocket. Now a short benchmark for 3i Atlas to keep the scale honest. Interstellar speed through our neighborhood around 200,000 kilometers per hour. Size estimates rounded to a few kilometers, understood with broad uncertainty. Brightness likely to remain modest until geometry improves. Natural explanations preferred, with past interstellar visitors as the anchor. The rest is waiting for better angles and cleaner frames. Return to the image that numbers support. Evening air cools. The horizon deepens from bronze to blue. A small greenish lantern hangs low, its center thickening, its halo soft. A straight ray lifts from it and points away from the sun, sometimes kinked by gusts in the solar wind, sometimes smooth as a plucked string. When you glance again after a minute or two, nothing dramatic has changed. When you glance again tomorrow, everything is a little clearer. 2 firm facts steady the hand that writes. Ion tails point away from the sun because charged particles carry them along magnetic field lines. Dust tails curve because heavier grains keep part of the comet's motion and respond more slowly to light. Learn those 2 truths, and every photograph begins to read like a diagram. It helps to group the technical pieces into one more breath that you can say quietly on the walk outside. Perihelion, half an AU. Closest Earth distance, comfortably measured in tens of millions of kilometers. Brightness near 6 at best, likely fainter in city skies. Gas speeds, hundreds of meters per second. Dust slower. Activity fades with distance unless vents reopen. Non-gravitational nudges, small. Then you can forget the rest for a while and look. What those parameters won't tell you is how the comet feels when it clears the last streetlight. For that, the mind reaches for a picture. Think of frost lifting from a shaded meadow when the first sunray climbs the hill. You cannot see the molecules move, but the air changes. SWAN has that quality in the eyepiece. The coma seems to breathe wider through the hour, not in a pulse, but in a calm drift that the heart recognizes even if the clock denies it. A grounded speculation belongs here, stated gently and left on the table. The quick, clean rise in color and coma size after perihelion suggests that fresh, volatile patches were near the surface. Those may have been opened by thermal fracturing as the nucleus rotated through sharp day-night swings, or by shallow slides that cleared insulating dust. If rotation period and jet geometry lined up for a few days, the tail would carry faint striations like stitching along a curtain. None of that needs exotica. Heat, spin, and fractures can account for beauty. The temptation in a month like this is to chase more precision than the experience requires. Comet magnitudes vary with technique and sky. Tail lengths depend on exposure time and field brightness. Outgassing rates are models wrapped around sparse measurements. The mind likes definitive numbers. The sky offers rounded ones and asks for patience. That is not a flaw. It is the method. There is merit in a short comparison that keeps excitement within comfort. A bright meteor shower in October can throw dozens of swift streaks across the night in a single hour under rural darkness. SWAN will not compete with that for spectacle. It does not need to. It brings a slower, steadier pleasure that grows as you learn where to place your eyes. A few seconds of careful focus pulls the coma from the background. A few more seconds separate the straight edge of the ion tail from the curved dust. After that, your eyes seem to know what to do. Place your notebook on the hood of the car or the porch rail and make a small table with 3 lines: date, sky quality, impression. On a good night, write coma round, gentle green, tail straight to 2 or 3 degrees. On a middling night, write halo dull, tail hinted. On a poor night, write low, lost in glow. Those notes are more than memory aids. They are a way of measuring without instruments, and over a week they tell the truth as clearly as a graph. 2 additional facts, tucked close to the heart of the scene. The coma's color is mainly from light emitted by carbon-bearing radicals excited by sunlight. It strengthens when activity opens fresh gas and fades as that gas thins. The ion tail reacts quickly to changes in the solar wind. You can stand at a tripod and see shape shift during a single session if the sun is restless. These are reliable, repeatable, and enough. Imagine, now, that the comet had crossed perihelion with better elongation, 30 degrees or more from the sun. Photographers would have turned early frames into a quiet storm of images. Time allocations at small observatories would have flexed. The numbers above would be the same. The narrative around them would be louder. This thought experiment is not regret. It is a reminder that geometry writes headlines as much as physics does. The scale can be hard to hold without a touchstone. Here is one. If you could place the Earth beside the coma, our planet would be a bead floating in a light-filled fog. The nucleus that drives that fog would still be a tiny lump by comparison, just a few kilometers across, turning, venting, and fading with distance. Beauty outruns size by a wide margin in comet stories. That is part of why they suit quiet nights so well. Another compact paragraph returns to 3I Atlas, because proportionality keeps us honest. An interstellar trajectory means little gravitational binding to our sun and a quick passage through the inner system. Speeds are high. Viewing geometry can be unkind. Activity can be faint until sunlight stirs sufficient material. All plausible, all ordinary for an object of that class. Patience is an instrument in those cases, as vital as an aperture. A single vivid image closes the ledger of values with something the hand can almost touch. Frosted grass crunches underfoot. The western sky holds a last ribbon of copper. You raise binoculars, and the small green ember steadies, then resolves into a soft disk with a thread of light slipping away from it. In that moment, the numbers do not vanish. They settle beneath the picture and make it sturdier. You know how far, how fast, how faint, how patient. The scene does the rest. What remains is a quiet question that resists finality. How many of our best nights depend on rounding the numbers just enough to relax? And how many of our best insights depend on picking them up again at dawn? Keep the notebook. Keep the pocket cluster of values. The sky will provide the rest. A comet can bloom in full view and still be invisible if every eye is tuned to a different song. Attention chooses, and the sky accepts our choice. Begin with a simple scene. A control room glows with quiet screens. Schedules live on the wall. Boxes of time, color-coded, slide through a calendar like trains on rails. An observatory cannot whip its track around on a whim. Proposals are written months ahead. Safety rules protect hardware from heat. Weather rearranges priorities. Even when a target is compelling, the machine that points the mirrors must respect the plan. Beauty is patient. Budgets are not. In the same hour, another room hums. This one with algorithms. A clip about 3I Atlas spikes. The platform feeds it forward. A comment repeats a rumor. The system tests its spark with 10 new viewers, then 100, then many. None of this is malicious. It is built to reinforce what seems to matter. When the rare arrives, the pipes swell to carry it. Everything else narrows to a trickle. Two firm facts hold steady under the mood. First, instrument time is finite and scheduled. Many facilities cannot safely look near the sun where SWAN first stirred. Second, public attention is finite and responsive. A labeled interstellar object like 3I Atlas will naturally win the day compared to a common comet. Neither fact is controversial. Together, they create a channel where quiet light can slip by. Inside that channel live the mental habits that keep us efficient and make us miss things. The first is anchoring. Once the crowd accepts that 3I Atlas is the story, new data about it feels heavier than new data about anything else. The second is confirmation. When a person expects strangeness, ordinary frames look less interesting. Ambiguous frames seem to hint at design. The third is availability. 1,000 mentions of one object make it easier to remember and easier to retrieve. so it becomes the choice when a reporter needs a headline or a friend reaches for a topic on a walk. A short breath of numbers keeps the psychology grounded. A modern social feed can cycle a hot story through millions of eyes in a single day. A telescope queue can take weeks to adjust. One system amplifies within hours, the other pivots within months. If a comet asks for attention in the gap between those scales, it will not find a crowd unless someone sounds a gentle, local alarm. Picture a different kind of alarm. A club email list, a text thread among observers in the same city. Look low in the southwest at dusk this week. No capital letters, no promise of spectacle, just a careful nudge to change where the eyes go. That small network is older than any platform. It still works. A grounded speculation sits neatly beside the facts. Had SWAN first brightened 30 degrees from the sun rather than pressed into the glare, early images would have multiplied quickly. More clubs would have posted finder charts. Small scopes would have swung from 3i Atlas simulations to a live view that rewarded patience. The physics inside the coma would be the same. The human pattern around it would not. What makes the 3i Atlas focus so sticky is not just rarity. It is narrative gravity. Interstellar is a word with a wide wake. It pulls ancient questions behind it. Are we alone? What else lives out there? What would a vessel look like if it crossed between stars? Even when we know the safest bet is a natural comet, our attention leans toward the thin chance of a different answer. This is not immaturity. It is a survival trait repurposed for science. Look hard at anomalies in case they matter. But there is a cost. When we weight anomaly hunting too heavily, we turn the commonplace into wallpaper. The irony is that comets like SWAN teach us most of what we know about outgassing, dust dynamics, and solar wind. They are the laboratory where models are tested, revised, and made useful for the next interstellar visitor. The quiet comet is not a distraction from the rare story. It is the instrument that tunes us for it. Think of the way sports fans watch a game. If the world tells them to watch a superstar, their eyes follow the ball and miss the spacing and movement that make the play work. An experienced coach teaches them to watch off the ball. SWAN is off the ball. The way its tail responds to the solar wind, the way its color builds and fades, the way activity rises and steps. These are the patterns that make our eyes smarter. When the next 3i Atlas level event demands judgment, that quiet practice becomes the difference between wonder and confusion. Two more facts, compact and calm. SWAN's early frames hid in public heliospheric maps where the background is textured and subtle changes can be lost without patient comparison. 3i Atlas, by definition interstellar, had very limited observing windows as it slipped behind the sun, which meant rumors grew faster than images. Those constraints shaped the month more than any theory did. A vivid image fixes the idea. A small crowd gathers at dusk on a neighborhood hill. Phones out, apps open, each person trying to find the same slice of sky. The horizon glows. One person reports they still can't see it. Another says they think they can. The object of the hunt is not 3i Atlas tonight. It is the quiet green ember low in the southwest, the one with a straight filament of light lifting from it like a chill breath. Someone takes a short exposure and shows the group the tail. Laughter, then a hush. The attention that refused to arrive through headlines arrives through a shared minute in the wind. The media echo matters, but it is not everything. Local practice creates its own gravity, and it can pull attention away from the loudest rumor toward the nearest beauty. The rule is simple. Put a friend beside you and show them where to look. The act breaks the spell of algorithms because it shortens the distance between information and experience to the length of an arm. Another brief return to craft. Notes help. When a person writes one sentence after a session, swan, green faint, tail straight 1 degree, they train their perception to hold on to the real and let go of the invented. In a month where interstellar talk is thick, that small ritual becomes a ballast. It is not anti-speculation, it is pre-speculation, the discipline that keeps imagination tethered to something the eye could see again tomorrow. There is a tempting thought we set on the table and leave there. Perhaps the sky prefers to hide its best lessons inside modest spectacles. The brain cannot stay on red alert every night. Comets that ask for a softer gaze teach us to live at a calmer level without switching the curiosity off. When the rare flares, we are ready. When it does not, we are not bored. And if you need a second vivid image to carry forward, take this one. A newspaper rack at a corner store. Every front page shouts the same name, 3i Atlas. Above the rack, the evening sky through the glass holds a thin, quiet brushstroke of light you could see with your own eyes if you paused before the door. Most people do not. Not because they do not care, but because caring has been trained to run through a very specific path. We can widen that path with practice measured in minutes, not months. One gentle question to hold between breaths. When the next crowded month arrives, and the feeds drum for a single story, what simple habit will you keep that lets the nearby, wordless thing rise into view? We close this section by stepping to the threshold of October, where the sky becomes a busy stage. Meteors whisper across long hours. Another comet brightens. Satellite flares spark at the edge of town. In that bustle, Swan begins to look almost intentional, as if the night itself tuned a perfect camouflage. The next chapter walks into that brightness, calmly. October opens like a stage already lit. Faint green at the horizon, quick silver scratches across the dark, and brief sparks that bloom and vanish before a breath finishes. The month feels designed to divide attention. The sky is generous. Our eyes are not. Picture a hill at the edge of town. A few friends unfold chairs and pass a thermos. The first Orionid draws a clean needle across the east. Another follows, a little slower. Then 3 in a row that make everyone laugh and fall quiet at the same time. Far lower, where the air still remembers the day, a small sea-green ember rests above the copper of dusk. Swan is here, but softly. 2 firm facts set the scene. The Orionids rise to a peak in the back half of October, and they come from dust shed by Halley. Small particles hit our atmosphere and burn in swift streaks that feel like whispers from another century. At the same time, another comet, Comet Lemon, climbs into easier view for small optics and adds its own dim fan of light to wide-field photographs. Those 2 notes alone can fill a night. Now add the small tricks of modern skies. Satellite flares still surprise at low angles. Planes in high air stumble across the frame of a long exposure and leave trails that look like drawn wires. City glow reaches higher when humidity clings. The result is a canvas busy with motion. In that motion, a calm, fixed glow can hide. Take a single breath for the technical cluster and then set it down. Orionids, late October, a modest few dozen per hour at the best rural sites, fewer for towns. Comet Lemon, bright enough for binoculars in good conditions. Satellite flares, seconds long, bright, then gone. Swan, near the southwest after dusk, low at first, higher each week. Coma tens to hundreds of thousands of kilometers across. ion tail straight away from the sun, dust tail curved along the path. These values are rounded, on purpose. They keep the mind steady. Return to image. The green head of swan thickens as the sun sinks. The tail steadies like a wire in a breeze that comes and goes. Then a meteor cuts the scene and every face lifts from the low horizon to the high dark. When the eyes return to the west, the small glow is still there, a little brighter now, as if waiting for attention to come back. It is a quiet lesson in the way spectacle steals focus while persistence rewards it. A grounded speculation belongs here. If you plotted attention against elevation, you would find a curve that rises with height, not with importance. People look where the neck tilts comfortably. A comet that starts low must win patience before it wins awe. October gives it that chance, but slowly. Each night adds a finger width of altitude to the view, and a minute or two of darkness before it descends into trees and rooftops. 2 more facts, kept plain. The Orionids are fast and leave faint trains that survive in memory longer than they survive in air. Swan's ion tail can kink if the solar wind grows gusty, and straighten again within minutes when the flow calms. In a single session, an attentive watcher can see both, and begin to understand that the night is not static. It is a river. Think of how the month looks to a camera. Set a tripod, frame the southwest, and take a handful of 10-second exposures. Stack them gently. The tail of swan becomes a drawn filament. A few meteors tattoo short lines into the image. A faint smear where Comet Lemon sits higher can be teased from the noise with care. A satellite flare burns a brief white oval near the edge and then is forgotten. The photograph is honest about the crowding. It is also honest about the thing that does not move much, the steady green that the eye almost missed. There is a strange comfort in this clutter. The sky provides decoys, and the mind learns to sort them. When you have watched 3 or 4 nights in a row, you begin to sense where to rest your gaze. The meteors demand a wide field and a patient stare. Swan demands a still hand and a slow breath. Lemon asks for a narrower patch of darkness and a bit more time. Each target chooses a different pace and teaches a different kind of attention. A short return to 3i Atlas respects the balance of the story. In early to mid-October, geometry is still unkind. The object remains hidden behind the sun or lost in angles that turn instruments away. That absence is loud. Every feed finds a way to fill it with rumor or recycled frames. The human spotlight has to point somewhere. October gives it meteors and a second comet to hold while the rare visitor is out of sight. The result looks like choreography, though it is only coincidence. Another vivid image settles the idea. A park path after dinner. Couples and joggers pass. A child points up and says star. The parent follows the finger, sees a plane, then a satellite, then a meteor, then shrugs and smiles. The comet below all that motion waits, patient as a stone in a stream. Someone with binoculars could put it into that family's hands in 10 seconds. Without the nudge, they walk past a small miracle that would have fit in their palm. It helps to keep one more compact breath of parameters for the month. Swan climbs a little higher each evening, enough to make the view more comfortable. The tail often appears longer after dusk deepens, even if its physical length has not changed. The Orionids tend to favor the late hours, though bright members can arrive whenever the radiant rises. Comet Lemon presents as a smaller, paler smear at mid-heights for casual optics. Satellite flares strike most often where the sky is still bright near the horizon. None of these lines is a promise. Together, they are a map. This is the chapter where the optional cosmic backdrop feels less like option and more like context. The night throws a party with several rooms. You can wander through all of them and still return to the quiet guest and not feel you missed the point. In fact, the other rooms make the quiet guest easier to love. Contrast is an ally when you use it to sharpen attention rather than to rank beauties. A careful speculation belongs at the edge of that thought. A month busy with meteors and multiple comets might act as a natural smokescreen for a public that follows the sky by headlines. It does not hide the object from observers, but it hides it from the timeline. The idea is not sinister, it is mechanical. Feeds choose one lane at a time. October provides many lanes. The algorithm slows for no one. 2 closing facts: calm and sturdy. SWAN's best evenings for many latitudes arrive near the 3rd week of October, when its angle improves and its brightness steadies for a handful of days. The Orionids crest near that same span. The overlap can trick newcomers into thinking that the green glow is part of the meteor shower. It is not. One is a steady lantern, the other is rain. That distinction is worth repeating once aloud before you look up. Hold one open question before we step forward. When a month hands us more light than we can hold, what small ritual keeps our attention from shattering? And which ritual will you choose the next time a quiet thing asks to be seen? In the 3rd week of October, a low green ember rises above rooftops in the southwest. Binoculars confirm it. The name is SWAN, and surprise is how near it feels. The first minutes are always the hardest. The sun has just slipped away, the sky is not yet truly dark, and the horizon keeps a copper memory of day. Streetlights wake one by one. You set your back to them and steady your elbows on a railing. The binocular view begins as a blur, and then resolves into a small, rounded glow with a pale thread of light leaning up and away. The moment repeats across neighborhoods and fields. Someone on a balcony, someone at a pier, someone in a quiet parking lot. A dozen separate breaths draw in at once, because the comet sits exactly where most of us never think to look. 2 firm facts steady the scene. Best visibility often comes 20 to 45 minutes after sunset, when the sky darkens, but the comet has not sunk too low to be swallowed by haze. And the ion tail points away from the sun by rule, so at dusk it tilts upward from the low western glow. Those 2 lines give the eye a map. Once they settle, the faint thread becomes easier to trust. Now draw the picture a bit wider. Overhead, the Orionids are scratching thin silver notes into the night. And higher still, a second comet sits as a pale smear that cameras love more than eyes. In the low southwest, SWAN holds steady. It is not a bright lantern. It is a green candle in a jar. If you breathe slowly and let your focus soften, the coma swells at the edges. If you look too hard, it shrinks. The sky is teaching a kind of attention that city life does not reward. Clarity likes a compact breadth of numbers. Around October 20, SWAN is nearest to Earth by a comfortable tens of millions of kilometers. Typical binoculars show the coma as a soft coin when the air is dry. The ion tail can run a few degrees in photographs, less in the eye, and it kinks when the solar wind gusts. Brightness for most observers sits near the threshold of naked eye visibility, more generous under rural darkness, muted in town. The values are round on purpose. They leave room for weather and human eyes. A grounded speculation sits beside those numbers without overreaching. Near the horizon, atmospheric extinction eats the blue first. The green of carbon radicals can warm by a shade when the air is thick. A faint sodium glow, if present, can add a pale, buttery hint that cameras pick up better than retinas. The result is a color that feels slightly different at sea level than on a mountain. The comet itself has not changed, the lens of air has. You can feel the geometry with your shoulders. Turn your left shoulder to where the sun went down and keep your face to the darkening sky. The straight edge of the ion tail points along an invisible line from the sun, while the dust tail curves more gently along the comet's path. If you mark the position with a tree or a rooftop and then glance back 5 minutes later, you see a tiny drift. It is a reminder that even slow wonders do not stand still. The evening offers a vivid image that many will keep. A small group gathers on a field at the edge of town. Someone passes around a pair of 7x50s. A child tries and cannot hold them steady, then braces on a parent's forearm and whispers that they think they see it. The parent takes the binoculars back and the glow pops into view at once. The green is subtle, but unmistakable. The tail is a suggestion. There is laughter, then a hush, then a phone raised for a short exposure to prove to doubters that the tail is real. The proof is not needed. The group has already accepted the gift. 2 more facts place the night inside the month. 3i Atlas is still out of reach, or only barely so, and the quiet frames of SWAN are arriving as fast as the feeds can ignore them. And SWAN's climb each evening adds a finger width of altitude that matters more than any headline. Those truths are small and practical. They affect what a person can see in more direct ways than any rumor. Hold another compact cluster for the walk outside tomorrow. 20 to 45 minutes after sunset, a low, steady green coma, a straight tail pointing away from the sun, a gentle curve that follows the path. The view improves as the air dries and as the comet rises each night. If you carry only that much, you will be ready. There's a quiet rhythm to the scattered successes and failures. Some nights end with nothing but a notebook line that reads, "Low and lost in glow." Some nights deliver a clear coin with a short thread that the eye cannot unsee afterward. The difference is not always skill. Often it is the honesty of the air. Maritime haze holds light longer. Inland dryness gives it back sooner. A cold front can turn a poor sight into a fine one for a night or two. The sky is a living place, and the comet is a guest that pays attention to its host. A second grounded speculation belongs to those who like to follow patterns. If SWAN's activity is driven by a few favored vents, then rotation may stitch faint striations into the ion tail. A short photographic stack on a steady tripod can record them when the solar wind is calm. The same pattern may vanish an hour later if the wind turns gusty. The absence is not a contradiction. It is the weather of space at work on a delicate plume. The most comforting part of this chapter is how ordinary the tools are. You do not need a tracking mount. You do not need a dark sky pilgrimage. A balcony with a partial view of the southwest, a fence post to steady your hands, and a willingness to arrive on time are enough. That last item is the only real barrier. Most of us are learning to treat the low horizon like a place where surprises wait. Return for a moment to the feel of the night around the view. Traffic murmurs below. A dog barks and then forgets why. A plane moves through the upper air and leaves a thin line for cameras to collect and for eyes to ignore. Under all that motion and noise, a small chemical lantern breathes in the sky, writing its color with sunlight and simple molecules. You know the physics. It helps to say it once and then let it go. The beauty does not depend on being explained in the moment. 2 final facts for the practical mind. If you are sharing the view, A paper finder chart or a small arrow scrawled on a phone screenshot will move eyes to the right patch of sky faster than any speech. And if you are waiting for a silence in conversation before offering binoculars, you will miss the best minutes. Hand them over while the sky is still copper. Let the first look happen while contrast is building. Confidence grows with a successful first try. An open question lingers, softer than the voices that carried through the field. When a quiet visitor introduces itself with a low bow at the horizon and we meet it there, what else in our restless routines could become visible if we simply shifted our gaze by a few degrees? October offers a clean laboratory for how minds work under a crowded sky. The results are gentle but clear. Signal and noise do not only live in instruments, they live in us. Begin with a night that almost got away. A small group meets at a schoolyard. The plan is simple. Watch the Orionids, try for Comet Lemon, and, if time and air allow, take a careful look low in the southwest where Swan should hang like a soft coin. The first bright meteor tilts every chin upward. Phones appear to log counts. A satellite glides through one frame and steals a few minutes of attention as people guess its name. By the time the group remembers the horizon, the comet is lower, the air is thicker, and the green coin becomes an argument instead of a view. The distraction is not a villain, it is a flow. We step into it without noticing. Two firm facts anchor the lesson. First, 3I Atlas spends much of early to mid-October behind the sun, or too close to it for comfortable observation, which invites talk to replace frames. Second, Swan's best window for many latitudes sits near the third week, 20 to 45 minutes after sunset, with brightness near the threshold of naked eye visibility under rural darkness. Those two lines are enough to explain why many people saw more rumors than images of one object, and more thin streaks than green light from the other. There is a simple principle that helps sort crowded nights. Decide the order of attention before you look up. The mind is pliable at the eyepiece. The brightest thing wins if you have not already chosen. When a plan says 2 quiet minutes for the southwest after dusk, the comet has a chance to beat the spectacle. Without that line, the schoolyard scene repeats. A compact breadth of method serves as a small antidote. Write 3 short rules on a pocket card. 1. Start low while the sky is still bright enough to orient by rooftops and trees. 2. Give the comet 1 slow minute in binoculars before you chase anything else. 3. Trade the view with a second observer who does not know exactly where you are pointing. These rules are not mystical. They are a hedge against the part of the brain that loves drama and leaps. Now widen the lens to schedules and instruments. Observatory cues are designed to protect precious hardware and to maximize science return. They do not pivot fast when geometry changes. That institutional inertia is wise in the long run, but in a month like this, it leaves a gap between what is interesting and what is measured. Amateurs cross that gap by habit rather than by committee. A balcony, a fence, a tripod. These simple tools outperform rumor because they add a frame to a claim. A grounded speculation sits gently beside those structures. If Swan had rounded perihelion with a comfortable elongation from the sun, finder charts would have spread faster, small scopes would have stacked cleaner frames, and the feeds would have filled with calm images. The comet did not need more activity, only kinder geometry and the same patience. The physics stays the same, the narrative gets louder. The human part of the lesson is familiar. Anchoring pulls attention to the first story that arrives, and it arrived with a heavy name. 3i Atlas. Confirmation bias encourages us to rate ambiguous frames as meaningful when they fit the story we expect. Availability bias fills conversation with whatever has the most recent repetitions. None of these habits are crimes. They are shortcuts that normally save time. In a crowded sky, they hide simpler pleasures in plain sight. 2 more facts keep the compass steady. The ion tail of SWAN points away from the sun by rule and can change shape within minutes when the solar wind shifts. The dust tail curves along the comet's path and evolves over hours and days. Anyone who sat through 3 short sessions in the 3rd week of October could watch those patterns settle into muscle memory. Straight for wind, curved for path. That is how signal feels when you finally hold it. A vivid image fixes the idea. A pier at the edge of a bay. Street musicians play a soft set. Joggers pass, heads down. Out over the water, a thin blue line of evening grows darker. A person with a small notebook pivots from the crowd and raises binoculars. A faint circular glow with a delicate filament snaps into view. For a minute, the music fades and the city becomes a low murmur. The notebook line reads, "Swan, steady, tail straight to a degree, color gentle." The rest of the night can be noise without being loss, because the signal has already landed. There is a second, quieter image that belongs here. A desk lamp and a browser window that shows yesterday's SWAN maps and tonight's. The difference is small but definite. A pixel cluster rises in calm arcs. The observer does not publish or post. They simply mark the change and step out at dusk with more confidence. That private loop, compare, mark, go look, beats the loudest headline for practical relevance. If you like frameworks, a small triangle is useful. Time, place, equipment. Choose 2 carefully, and the 3rd will often take care of itself. Time. Arrive in the first half hour after sunset. Place. A west-southwest horizon where rooftops drop away. Equipment. Any binoculars stabilized on a railing. Change one, and the others must compensate. If the place is poor, the time and steadiness must be better. If the equipment is unsteady, the time must be precise and the horizon clean. This triangle turns distraction into a manageable variable rather than a fate. Return for a moment to 3i Atlas, because balance is part of the lesson. Interstellar objects deserve attention for reasons that do not require exotic explanations. They carry chemistry and structure from far away into our testing range for a short season. The right response to their rarity is not to elevate them above every other light, but to keep our tools sharp on the many comets that teach the same physics in slower, kinder scenes. SWAN is not a consolation prize. It is the textbook open to the right chapter at the right time. Another compact breath of numbers grounds the reflection. SWAN's perihelion near half an astronomical unit. A closest Earth approach in the 3rd week of October, with distances rounded to comfortable tens of millions of kilometers. Apparent brightness flirting with magnitude 6. The Orionids offering a modest few dozen meteors per hour at rural sites during their peak nights. None of these values screams. All of them whisper the same counsel: make a plan, arrive on time, and look where others do not. The most practical habit that emerges from this month is almost too small to name. When a crowded sky tempts you to chase, add 1 minute of stillness for a target that does not demand it. That minute is the lever that moves a night from narration to observation. It is also the minute most likely to convert a friend from listener to witness. Once a person has seen a comet with their own eyes, the word comet stops being a genre of news and becomes something they can hold. 2 closing facts, kept plain to respect the craft. SWAN will fade as it recedes and as outgassing declines. The green will soften and the tail will thin. 3i Atlas will return to view when geometry allows, and the best judgments about its nature will come from ordinary measurements compared across many nights. The drama lives in patience. The rest is color. A final image settles the chapter. A kitchen light clicks off. The back door opens to a small deck. Traffic hums, then quiets. You count slowly to 30 and raise binoculars toward a landmark you chose in daylight. A soft, rounded glow answers, with a faint line leaning away toward the dark. You say nothing, because the lesson is not in the telling, it is in the seeing. One open question to carry forward. When the next month crowds itself with meteors, satellites, and rumors, which single minute will you reserve for the quiet thing that cannot ask for attention? And how will you protect it from everything that can? A new section begins at a quiet bench, the place where suspense steps aside and measurements take the chair. The sky still whispers, but the ledger opens. Start with 2 firm truths. First, 3i Atlas follows a hyperbolic path, which means it is not bound to the sun. The eccentricity sits above 1, comfortably. Second, the observing geometry in early to mid-October kept the object close to the sun in our sky. So many ground instruments had little or no safe view. Those 2 facts alone explain why the story felt louder than the data for a while. Now place the object in motion. The speed through the inner system is about 200,000 kilometers per hour, a number rounded on purpose, fast enough to cross the moon's distance in a few hours if it were pointed our way. The direction shifts as gravity bends the track, but nothing about that bend requires exotic forces. Radiation pressure acts, outgassing may act, and the sun rules the frame. Size is the hardest thing for a casual reader to hold, because brightness does not map cleanly to bulk. Early estimates set the nucleus in the few kilometer class, but every digit carries long shadows. Albedo matters. Dust production matters more. A small, dusty comet can look larger to a telescope than a bigger, quiet one. The prudent posture is to hold a range and release the urge to nail a single number before the geometry improves. Brightness behavior is the next place where patience earns more than urgency. Photometry gathered at harsh phase angles has to fight glare. Some nights the light curve climbs slower than a typical comet formula would predict. On other nights it hurries. Neither case proves anything by itself. The cleaner tests come when the phase angle softens and the tail, if present, separates from the head on the detector. Until then, the honest sentence is short. Activity exists, but its rhythm under poor geometry is easy to misread. Spectra live or die by signal to noise. When frames are thin, the safest guess about composition stays with the usual cometary suspects. Cyanogen lines may appear. Carbon chains may write the familiar bands. Sodium can glow faintly. Water products can be inferred from daughter species. If later observing runs publish a cleaner palette, we will move the anchor. For now, chemistry does not need the extraordinary to explain the ordinary. Dynamics teams fit small, non-gravitational terms when outgassing pushes a nucleus. Those parameters, one radial, one transverse, one normal to the orbital plane, often take days or weeks of good astrometry to settle. In the early geometry of 3i Atlas, fits wobble. That wobble is not a mystery, it is a mirror of sparse angles. As more nights accumulate, the curve tightens and the small pushes fall toward modest values that most comets carry without headlines. The comparison that keeps minds balanced is simple. Oumuamua showed no visible coma and left us with ideas about radiation pressure and shape that remain debated. Borisov behaved like a textbook comet and taught us that interstellar ice can look familiar. 3I Atlas, so far, resembles the second story more than the first. If later weeks deliver surprises, they will be weighed against that baseline. Until then, the cleanest sentence is the shortest. It looks natural. Observability is a practical science, not a mood. Telescopes cannot point close to the sun without risk. Survey schedules cannot change direction overnight. Spacecraft have fields of view and tasks that do not revolve around a single visitor. The result is a gap. A public that hears interstellar leans forward, then meets a stretch of days where new frames are rare. Rumor races and rumors breathe. Instruments do not. They take their time, and that time protects the craft. A compact breadth of numbers, clustered for one pocket. Interstellar, hyperbolic, eccentricity above 1, speed near 200,000 kilometers per hour. Size a few kilometers with broad error bars. Brightness modest, improving with geometry. Small non-gravitational terms likely, not dramatic. Spectral lines expected to match ordinary comet chemistry when signal allows. Next best windows later in the year when the elongation grows. That is enough to hold for now. Set those values beside a single vivid image, because the mind remembers pictures. Imagine a lab notebook open on a metal cart that hums softly. Outside that room, voices argue about what must be true. Inside, a pencil draws a short arrow from a dot to another dot, then writes, "Good astrometry, clear seeing." The arrow grows into a path that curves by exactly the amount solar gravity demands. The page is not cinematic. It is calm. Calm is the point. 2 more facts steady the hand. Interstellar speed guarantees a short visit. There will be no leisurely loop through the outer system. And solar conjunctions, the passages behind the sun as seen from Earth, are baked into the geometry. Breaks in coverage are not evidence, they are shadows. A grounded speculation belongs near those truths, and it is modest. When 3I Atlas returns to a friendlier angle, the coma will probably present as a small, steady envelope with a faint tail. The light curve will likely follow a power law within the wide scatter comets famously show. Spectra will likely confirm the usual bands. If one or more of those expectations bends, the bend will need repetition before it earns a claim. Repetition is the coin that buys belief. There is a useful humility in remembering how often numbers saved us from the story we wanted. In the first weeks after Oumuamua, the lack of a visible coma made the mind jump. Later, careful photometry and thermal limits trimmed those jumps back to size. In the first months of Borisov, the shock of a second interstellar visitor tempted some to hunt differences. Later, every spectrum said familiar. The ledger keeps us from sprinting when a walk would do. A small table helps sleep and science live together. 3 rows, 3 columns. Row 1, geometry, harsh, improving, good. Row 2, photometry, scattered, converging, useful. Row 3, dynamics, under-constrained, stabilizing, tight. Fill the first column with patience, the second with longer sessions, the third with quiet confidence. That table is not poetry, but it makes the poetry safer to write after the data settles. Return for a moment to the human rhythm outside the dome. People will ask if 3I Atlas is a ship. The clean answer is no, with a smile. Then add the sentence that matters. Nature has given us a fast, rare snowball, with a short window and complicated angles. If we keep our eyes on what the instruments actually record, we will bring home truths that last longer than a headline. 2 final facts for the ledger before we close the page. Trajectory solutions improve most when observations bracket the solar passage on both sides, so patience on the far side buys precision here. And small accelerations from outgassing, if present, can look large when data are sparse, then shrink as nights accumulate. Both statements have been true for many comets. They will likely be true here. One open question remains, soft and honest. When the object leaves our sky and our feeds, what single measurement will we be proud to have made well? The one that still teaches 10 years from now. End quietly. The bench is ready, the pencils are sharp, and the sky will take its time. Rumor travels faster than light curves, so we test the big claims, gently, with checklists instead of headlines. Begin with the picture people quietly want, an artifact from elsewhere, perhaps a probe, perhaps debris with purpose, threading the inner system. The imagination is allowed a minute, then the pencil comes out. 2 firm facts set the frame. 3i Atlas rides a hyperbolic path with eccentricity above 1, which simply means unbound and fast. And early observing geometry kept it close to the sun in our sky, thinning the data and thickening the talk. Those truths do not kill speculation, they scale it. What would artifact require, in the calmest sense? Start with controlled changes in motion that cannot be explained by sunlight or gas. Engineers call it delta V that points the wrong way at the wrong time. Add persistent, narrowband radio or optical beacons that repeat with intent. Then look for thermal behavior out of step with sunlight, waste heat that waxes and wanes by a schedule rather than by distance. Finally, seek surfaces that glint with specular flashes sharper than dust or ice can manage. That is a sober checklist, not a fantasy. Now, cluster the numbers in one breath and set them down. Speeds rounded to 200,000 kilometers per hour. Outgassing pushes that usually sit in the small, comet-like range. Phase angles harsh, then improving later in the year. No confirmed narrowband signals. No repeated, schedule-like accelerations. No thermal excess beyond what sunlight should stir. The list is short on purpose. It leaves space for later. A vivid image helps the mind hold the test. Imagine a chalkboard with 3 columns: sunlight, gas, intent. Under sunlight, you write radiation pressure and heating. Under gas, you write jets, spin, and small torques. Under intent, you leave blank lines waiting for evidence that repeats like a heartbeat. The board is handsome in its emptiness. It allows the next measurements to speak. 2 more facts anchor the quiet. Comet nuclei often show non-gravitational accelerations when vents open. Those terms shrink or shift as observations accumulate. And apparent oddities under poor geometry have fooled careful teams before. When angles soften, ordinary behavior replaces drama. These are not excuses. They are lessons learned the expensive way. A cautious speculation belongs here. If 3i Atlas reveals a tail that aligns and evolves as the solar wind dictates, and a coma that brightens with the usual power law rhythm as phase angles improve, then the simplest file label, natural comet, will grow heavier with each night. If, instead, we record coordinated thrust-like changes in motion across multiple apparitions within a single week, timed against no solar driver, the label will loosen. We are not there. Return to imagery for the listener's breath. Picture a metal cart in a quiet control room. On it, a notebook open to a page with tidy rows, time, position, uncertainty, Sky quality. Outside, chatter insists that meaning has arrived. Inside, a person draws a tiny arrow and writes, "Good seeing, faint coma." The narrative slows to the speed of graphite. Our own minds need guardrails when mystery beckons. Anchoring makes the first story sticky. Confirmation makes ambiguous frames look suggestive. Availability floods our recall with whatever the feed repeats. There is a counterweight, repetition with instruments under changing geometry. That is how real anomalies survive the calm. Place 3i Atlas beside the familiar yardstick. Oumuamua, no visible coma, left room for radiation pressure ideas that remain debated. Borisov, classic comet, narrowed that room again. 3i Atlas currently rhymes with Borisov more than with Oumuamua. Rhymes are not verdicts, but they are not nothing. A compact breath of diagnostics for the pocket. Watch for non-solar driven acceleration. Search for repeating narrowband signals. Model thermal behavior against simple sunlight. Check for specular glints that track a rigid, flat surface. Compare the evolving light curve with standard comet laws. If all 5 stay ordinary, the extraordinary claim gets lighter each week. Now a thought experiment that honors curiosity without feeding it. Suppose a small, glossy panel rode inside the coma, tumbling with a stable period. You would expect glints repeating at that period, surviving changes in geometry, and a tiny periodic tug on the fit to the orbit. Suppose a microthruster fired. You would expect a step in residuals that aligns with no solar wind shift and reappears later with the same direction and size. These are measurable. They leave fingerprints. We have not seen those fingerprints yet. 2 more plain facts keep the shoulders down. Spectra under weak signal do not license grand chemistry. The safe expectation is the ordinary palette. Carbon bands, faint sodium, water products inferred by daughters, pending better frames, and small non-gravitational terms will wobble in early solutions, then settle as nights stack up. That is how this work behaves when it is honest. A second vivid image, for balance. A backyard table, red flashlight, printed finder chart. The page reads, Swan, low at dusk, eye on tail straight. A friend asks, and the interstellar one? You say, we'll know more when the angle's cool. The friend nods and looks through binoculars. The comet in the eyepiece answers the part of the heart that rumor cannot. Keep the numbers for sleep close and light. Eccentricity above 1. Speeds near 200,000 kilometers per hour. No scheduled accelerations. No repeating beacon. Non-gravitational fits small and settling. Next windows later, when elongation grows. Set the cluster down. Breathe. Open a gentle question that invites patience rather than fear. What single, repeatable signature, timed thrust, narrowband beacon, thermal excess, would you accept as enough to upend the simple comet label? And are we prepared to test for it cleanly? Close the page without ceremony, evidence first, stories later. Two travelers share the month, one loud by rarity, one quiet by presence. Set them side by side and the contrast begins to teach more than either alone. Picture a notebook on the porch rail at dusk. 2 columns wait for entries. On the left, the heading reads 3i Atlas. On the right, it reads Swan. The evening air cools. A first star arrives. The pencil rests on the spiral as if choosing which column to fill first. 2 firm facts take their places before any poetry slips in. 3i Atlas is interstellar, on a hyperbolic path, unbound to the sun, crossing our neighborhood at roughly 200,000 kilometers per hour. SWAN is a comet from our own deep stars, through perihelion around September 12 at a distance near half an astronomical unit, then drifting outward while brightening into the evenings of mid to late October. Those two lines already explain why one drew headlines and the other asked for patience. Now give each traveler a small portrait. 3I Atlas appears in early, thin frames near the sun, geometry unkind, information patchy. It carries the weight of a label that pulls imagination forward, the third of its kind that we know. SWAN blooms in the low southwest after dusk, a rounded glow with a fine thread lifting from it, faithful to the sun's quiet rules. One is rare, one is ready, one is... Let the technical cluster arrive in one breath. 3 Atlas, eccentricity above 1, small non-gravitational terms likely and settling later, brightness modest under harsh phase angles, spectra expected to match ordinary comet chemistry when signal allows. SWAN, perihelion, near half an AU, closest Earth approach around the third week of October by tens of millions of kilometers. Brightness near magnitude 6 for darker sites, ion tail straight away from the sun, dust tail curved along the path. That pocket set is enough to carry into the yard. A single vivid image shows how the mirror works. Two people share binoculars on a pier. They ask first about 3I Atlas. The answer is a calm promise that better angles will come later. Then they sweep low and find the small, sea-green glow of SWAN with its narrow ray. The present object rewards the present night. The rare object asks for patience. Both answers are right. Consider method, because method is what the mirror reflects most clearly. 3I Atlas demands careful dynamics across changing geometry, a slow tightening of a path that begins with long uncertainties. SWAN rewards regular, simple practice, the 2 or 3 minutes at dusk that teach the eye to separate straight from curved, wind from path, chemistry from glare. The same hands can do both. The tools are the same. The pace is different. 2 more facts keep the conversation honest. Solar conjunction placed 3I Atlas behind the sun for many observers during the stretch when talk ran far ahead of measurements, so a quiet data gap was interpreted by some as mystery when it was only geometry. SWAN's early low elongation kept it out of easy reach until it had already turned the corner around the sun, so its strong moments appeared during a daily window that many people do not habitually visit. Constraints set the stage, not intent. A grounded speculation, stated softly, sits between the columns. If the roles were reversed, and a quiet comet had pressed for attention, while a rare interstellar object bloomed low and bright after sunset, the attention map would still favor the interstellar label. Words like interstellar and third carry narrative gravity. Our minds lean toward them. The remedy is not to deny the pull, it is to build habits that go looking for light where labels are silent. Return to the notebook on the porch rail. Under 3I Atlas, a line appears. Interstellar, hyperbolic, poor geometry now, better later. Under SWAN, a line appears. Low southwest, rounded coma, straight faint tail, color gentle. Neither line is grand. Together they are generous. Side by side, they anchor the month in a way that commentary cannot. A wider lens adds the background that makes the mirror brighter. Meteors sketch quick letters across the night in late October. Comet Lemon holds a steady, pale smear higher up. Satellite flares glance off the corners of photographs. The crowd is real. It can turn a person's plan into drift if they do not decide in advance what they came to see. This is where the mirror stops comparing objects and starts comparing habits. 2 more facts, compact and useful. Swan's ion tail can change shape within minutes when the solar wind gusts, while its dust tail evolves slowly over hours and days. 3-eye Atlas, moving fast and observed at harsh angles, will not yield its subtleties until the phase angle softens and coverage brackets the solar passage. Those facts do not compete. They coordinate. They tell you what kind of patience each object asks for. A second vivid image places both travelers in one glance. You stand on a small ridge with a friend. The horizon in the west is still warm. Swan sits just above it, a quiet lantern that grows easier to see as dusk deepens. Over your shoulder, meteors whisper. In your pocket, a card reads that 3-eye Atlas will step back into fairer view later in the year. You feel no conflict. Tonight has a gift on offer. Later we'll have another. What the mirror shows most clearly is how story shapes sight. The label 3-eye Atlas turns every ambiguous frame into a magnet for meaning. The label Swan turns a living, present scene into a tutorial in seeing. If you give both their due, you learn the trick that astronomers rely on when the sky is crowded. You let the rare stay rare without letting it starve the near. One compact breath of craft belongs near the close. For 3-eye Atlas, patience, geometry, repeated measures. For Swan, binoculars, a steady rest, the first half hour after sunset. For both, notes that say only what was seen. These are small rules, but they scale. They make the brain a better instrument than any feed. 2 final facts, placed like bookends on the month shelf. Swan's color and tail will soften as distance increases and activity falls, so the best memories are made now. 3-eye Atlas will leave quickly when the season is done. Another brief lesson in the speed of visitors from far away. Those bookends are reminders to receive what is offered on the night it is offered. A gentle speculation carries the reflection forward. Perhaps we miss less when we practice a 2-column habit, one for what is rare, one for what is near. The act of writing a line under each can keep wonder from tipping too far to either side. A closing question, open by design, holds the mirror to the person more than to the sky. When the next month brings a loud headline and a quiet glow, which column will you fill first, and how will you make room to fill both? Close this section with a calm bridge. We have compared the travelers and learned how attention bends the beam. The next step is simple and practical, a set of small moves that widen the field so quiet marvels do not slip through. We rebuild the watch, one habit at a time, and we start tomorrow at dusk. When noise grows louder than stars, we rebuild from small moves. Keep the gear simple, keep the plan short, let repetition do the heavy lifting. Curiosity becomes a lighthouse when it is turned on at the same hour, in the same direction, night after night. Begin with a pocket ritual. Fold a note card and write 3 lines. First line, time window, the first half hour after sunset. Second line, direction, southwest to west, depending on season. Third line, action, 1 slow minute in binoculars before anything else. Put the card in a jacket, not a drawer. The best tools are the ones that touch fabric. Now set the field. Find a place where the horizon drops, a parking deck, a pier, a hill with trees below your feet. Scout in daylight and pick 2 landmarks that will be visible at dusk, a radio mast, a rooftop edge. These anchors become your arrows when the sky is still bright. When the first evening comes, arrive 10 minutes early. Attention works better when it is not out of breath. 2 firm facts give the routine its backbone. First, Many comets, including SWAN, show their best contrast in the short span after sunset when the sky is darkening, but not yet black. Second, ion tails point away from the sun, so the straight feature you are hunting will tilt up from the glow. Those lines are not tips, they are rules. They turn guessing into seeing. Build a 4-step loop that fits into a single breath. Step 1. Orient with the landmarks. Step 2. Brace your elbows, then sweep a slow line where the tail should rise. Step 3. Hold for 5 breaths and let the coma thicken at the edge of vision. Step 4. Trade the view with the second person who does not know exactly where you pointed. If they confirm, you are done. If they do not, try once more, then put the binoculars down and enjoy the rest of the sky. Confidence grows faster when it is not forced. Write the simplest log that can still teach. Date, sky quality, impression. The third word matters most. Coma round, color gentle, tail straight 1 degree, or low and lost in glow. A week of such lines will train your eyes more than any forum thread. It will also give you language to offer a friend, which is often the difference between vague memory and a shared moment that sticks. Clocks and angles decide more than headlines. If the air at your site often holds haze, learn to shift 10 minutes later than the chart suggests. If the horizon is clean, learn to start earlier than comfort would allow. If smoke or thin cloud drifts in, do not fight it. Move higher in the sky for the night and call it a rehearsal. A plan that bends lasts longer than a plan that breaks. Keep a second card for the daytime checks that make the night easier. In the morning, look at a public heliospheric map for texture and watch for any small rise where a comet might be. Note the sun's azimuth at sunset. Note the moon's age. If the moon is bright and close, lower your expectations but keep the habit. Warm gear with routine. Cool impatience with routine. Let the habit carry you through imperfect nights. 2 more facts protect your time. Non-gravitational nudges from comet jets are real but small. They do not erase the rule that straight features follow the sun. And satellites and planes will draw lines across your frame. They are episodic, not persistent. The comet's glow does not behave like traffic. Once you feel that difference, clutter stops being a rival. A practical kit fits in one bag. Binoculars with a wide field, a paper chart marked with your 2 landmarks, a red flashlight, a small notebook with a pencil that writes in cold, a tripod clamp for the binoculars if you have one, not required, a thermos because comfort keeps you outside. The bag should be light enough that you take it on a walk without deciding. If a camera is part of your joy, keep its rules just as simple. 10-second exposures at high sensitivity on a tripod will reveal what the eye doubts. Stack a handful later if you like, only after you have looked. A line on the comet for one set, a line on the stars for another. The first tells you how the tail behaves. The second tells you how the sky moves. The goal is not a gallery. The goal is confidence. Invite others the way a good host invites guests, by lowering the barrier. Do not start with a lecture. Start with the wrong question. Can you hold these steady for 5 breaths? When they answer yes, turn their shoulders toward the landmarks and let the glow introduce itself. If the first attempt fails, change the time by 10 minutes the next evening and try again. The human eye is an instrument that learns, but only when the lesson repeats. A grounded speculation belongs here, modest and useful. The next quiet marvel may enter near the sun again. Low elongation, thin windows, whispering through public maps before it has a public name. If you check those maps during coffee and give the low horizon 2 deliberate minutes most nights, you will catch the rise earlier than the feed will. The physics is ordinary, the attention is not. 2 more facts keep the triangle of time, place, and equipment honest. If you lose place, no amount of equipment will rescue the view. If you lose time, a better camera only records a brighter haze. If you lose steadiness, the best landmarks blur. Choose 2 corners of the triangle with care, and the third will often cooperate. The triangle is a compass, not a chore. Give 3i Atlas its rightful square on the card. Right, interstellar, hyperbolic, geometry poor now, better later, patience. That single line is a promise to future you, the one who will read it when the angles improve. Meanwhile, SWAN, and comets like it, give your skills a gym where the weights are not too heavy. The decades have taught astronomers this pacing for free. You can borrow it in a month. 1 image holds the method in memory. A balcony rail cool to the touch, a phone dimmed, a map with 2 arrows, a city hum below. You lift binoculars. The small green coin appears. A thin thread lifts away from the copper horizon. You lower the glass and say, "There," and someone beside you sees it too. The night has other rooms to visit, meteors and flares in the long dark above, but the ritual already bought what it came for. Cluster your numbers for sleep, where you can recite them and forget them afterward. First half hour after sunset. Low horizon, landmarks ready. Ion tail straight from the sun, dust tail curved along the path. Coma grows with activity, fades with distance. Notes short, patient, repeat tomorrow. Numbers should make your shoulders drop, not rise. Build a small alert circle that runs on trust, not scale. 3 people who text one another at dusk. Look now. Low southwest. 2 degrees above the roofline. Then a photo if someone needs proof. This is the network that keeps beauty from falling between official channels. It is the oldest instrument in astronomy. Hands pointed toward the sky with names attached. 2 final facts. Practical and calm. Your eyes improve with practice nearly as quickly as your images do. And children, neighbors, new observers, they anchor your attention better than any app because they ask for reality, not rumor. When you teach someone the low horizon, you teach yourself to return. A gentle question closes the toolkit. Which single habit, the card in the pocket, the 2 landmarks, the 1 minute before anything else, will you adopt tonight so the next quiet visitor does not pass unannounced? A night plan that turns suspense into poise. No frenzy, only moves you can repeat under any sky. Whether the feeds are loud or silent, begin before sunset. Put the smallest kit by the door. Binoculars with a wide field. A paper chart with 2 landmarks you scouted in daylight. A pencil that writes when cold. A folded card with 3 lines. Time window, direction, 1 slow minute before anything else. Rituals work best when they weigh almost nothing. Walk the route you will use later and feel how the horizon drops in the southwest. A low roofline, a radio mast, a gap between trees. You are choosing anchors that your eyes will find quickly when the light is thin. The mind remembers places better than coordinates because places carry stories. Give your landmarks short names that make sense to you. Mast, gable, gap. Return at the right moment. For low comets like SWAN, the best contrast often arrives 20 to 45 minutes after sunset, when the sky is dark enough to separate faint things and bright enough to guide the eye. Human dark adaptation takes about 20 minutes. It resets with a glance at a bright screen. Shield your phone or dim it hard. These 2 facts are small, practical, and generous. Face the copper glow where the sun went down. Turn your left shoulder toward it and let your body show you a line that runs away from the light across the sky. Ion tails point along that line. Dust tails curve more gently along the comet's path. Say that once under your breath. Straight follows sun. Curved follows motion. The sentence is simple by design. It frees attention for seeing. Now the minute that matters. Brace your elbows on a railing and lift the binoculars. Sweep a narrow strip where the tail should rise. Stop when the field feels evenly speckled. Hold for 5 breaths. The coma will soften the starry texture if the air is honest. Do not search with your jaw clenched. Relaxing the jaw helps the eyes do their work. This is not mysticism, only physiology. Trade the view with someone who did not watch you point. If they see the same round glow and the same pale line leaning away, you are done with proof. If they do not, try once more, then accept the night's verdict. Certainty grows faster when it is not chased. The ritual favors patience over pride. A compact breath of numbers steadies the plan in the pocket. Swan's green coma may present to the eye as a soft coin. The ion tail often reaches a degree or two for cameras, less for eyes. The best minutes sit in that 20 to 45 after sunset band. Your eyes need about 20 quiet minutes to adapt. If the moon is bright, lower expectations and keep the habit. Numbers finished, attention returns to the sky. Consider the way neighborhoods change the lesson. Maritime haze warms colors and smears contrast low. Mountain air cools them and sharpens edges. If your horizon is humid, shift 10 minutes later and walk 10 meters to find a slightly cleaner wedge between buildings. If the air is dry, start 10 minutes early and let the deepening blue pull the comet forward. Small adjustments matter more than a perfect sight. This is a calmer kind of navigation. Add a second loop for those who like to train perception. After the first minute, lower the binoculars and look with unaided eyes at the exact spot you found. Let a star just outside the coma serve as an anchor. Blink slowly. The glow may hold. Even if it does not, the practice teaches where to plant your gaze next time. A ritual that leaves room for failure lasts longer than one that does not. Write an honest line in the notebook. Date, sky quality, impression. Coma round, color gentle, tail straight to a finger width. Or low, lost in glow. Both lines are wins. They teach your future self where to place hope. They also give you a language to share with a neighbor who has never seen a comet and thinks the word belongs only to headlines. A vivid picture gives the ritual memory. A quiet cul-de-sac. Lawn sprinklers whisper. A crescent of afterglow lingers above a roof. You rest your elbows on a mailbox and lift the glass. The field steadies. A round, sea-tinted smudge appears, and from its crown a thin, honest filament leans away from the sunset. A dog's collar clinks as someone walks by. You lower the binoculars and nod to them without explaining. The picture is already complete. 2 grounded facts keep this from drifting into charm. The shape of Swan's ion tail can change within minutes if the solar wind gusts, so a single session can teach you that space has weather. And the comet's brightness will soften with distance. If tonight is good, the next few nights will invite repeat visits before the fade. These truths belong in your pocket as much as the poetry does. A grounded speculation, modest and useful, takes its seat. If a few vents dominate Swan's activity, a rotation period could stitch faint striations into the ion tail. A short stack of 10-second exposures on a stable tripod may reveal those threads when the wind is calm. If the wind turns gusty, they will vanish. The absence is not proof against the pattern. It is the river of charged particles rearranging the filament. We have spoken much of SWAN. Keep a small square on the card for 3i Atlas. Write only what keeps the heart steady. Interstellar, hyperbolic. Poor geometry now, better later. The ritual you are building tonight, 1 slow minute, 2 landmarks, 5 breaths, will be the same when 3i Atlas returns to view. Practice on the near to do justice to the rare. That is the quiet secret behind the calm. You will learn the hour by feel. The city noise thins. A first bat cuts a quick angle above the street. The sky between copper and blue deepens to a color no camera quite captures. You will find that your shoulders drop before your eyes find the field. That is the ritual doing its work. It turns a month of rumors into a habit that delivers reality under your fingertips. Share it without ceremony. Do not pitch. Put the binoculars in a friend's hands and tell them where to rest their elbows. Point to the mast and the gable. Say, "Look there." Breathe 5 times. Then tell me if you see a round glow with a faint straight line leaning up and away. The sentence is plain. The moment is not. Keep the daytime part light. Over coffee, glance at the public heliospheric map. Does a dot brighten faster than the background? Note the sun's azimuth at sunset. Note the moon's age. If the numbers hint at harder conditions, resolve to arrive anyway. The ritual has value on mediocre nights because it makes good nights easy when they come. Cluster the essentials into 1 more breath you can repeat while the kettle rattles. First half hour after sunset. Left shoulder toward the sun's last place. Straight follows sun. Curved follows motion. Elbows braced. 5 breaths. Trade the view. Write a line. Repeat tomorrow. It is enough. A gentle question floats at the edge of the plan. If a single repeatable minute can turn rumor into seeing, what other small habits could move the rest of your life from feed to field? Keep the ritual light and repeatable. The sky will meet you halfway. The month asked one thing out loud and another thing softly. We chased the loud one. The soft one waited in the low glow and kept its patience. The loud question wore a heavy name. Is 3i Atlas a messenger with intent, or a natural traveler written in ice and dust? Good question. It deserves careful instruments and a long ledger, but the soft question waited under it like bedrock. How do we learn to see what is near when rarity steals the room? That second question is less glamorous and more useful. It changes nights. 2 firm facts sit on the table where opinions tend to pile. 3i Atlas is interstellar, on a hyperbolic track, unbound, speed rounded near 200,000 kilometers per hour. SWAN slid around the sun near September 12 at about half an astronomical unit and offered its best, low, in the southwest through the 3rd week of October. Those truths do not compete. Together they draw a map of attention. We can admit the pull of rare things without letting it bend our sight to breaking. The mind hunts anomalies because sometimes survival depends on them. In our era, it mostly depends on something gentler, habits that keep us from mistaking loudness for importance. SWAN taught that without a lecture. It arrived like a sea-green lamp left on in another room, visible if you tilted your head. A compact breath of values steadies the thought. Interstellar, unbound, eccentricity above 1. Perihelion near half an AU. Closest Earth distance in the 3rd week, rounded to tens of millions of kilometers. Ion tail straight away from the sun. Dust tail curved along the path. Magnitude near 6 under darker skies. Humbler in towns. Numbers finished. the mind can return to imagery without wobble. One vivid image gathers the lesson. A field behind an apartment block. Lawn sprinklers hiss. The horizon holds a copper seam. Someone braces their elbows on a railing and the small, rounded glow of Swan steps out, with a faint, straight filament leaning up from it. In a pocket, a card reads, "First half hour after sunset. Left shoulder toward the sun's last place. 5 breaths." The card mattered more than any headline. A grounded speculation follows at a respectful distance. If we had written that card a month earlier and carried it every dusk, Swan would have entered our notebooks sooner. If Three-Eye Atlas had bloomed low and green while Swan hid behind the sun, the feeds would still have favored the interstellar label. That is narrative gravity, not conspiracy. The remedy is not to scold the crowd. It is to widen our small personal beam. 2 more facts help the remedy feel sturdy. Instruments cannot safely look near the sun when geometry is harsh. Gaps are shadows, not secrets. And quiet comets are where our models of tails, Comet, and non-gravitational nudges learn to walk before they run at interstellar speed. The laboratory was open all month. Many of us walked past it on our way to read about another lab that would reopen later. So perhaps the better question is the one that turns a night plan into a compass. Not what is it, but how shall we look? The first question gets its turn when angles improve. The second question is always on the clock. It asks for 2 landmarks, 1 slow minute, 5 breaths, a small note after. It asks for a habit you can repeat when the feed is quiet and when it is loud. It is patient and practical, stubborn and kind. If you want a mirror that fits into a single sentence, here it is. Three-Eye Atlas sharpened our appetite. Swan sharpened our eyes. Appetite without eyesight makes rumor. Eyesight without appetite makes routine. The good month is the one that holds both. One gentle, open question to carry forward. When the next crowded sky arrives, what tiny ritual, card, landmarks, minute, will you protect so that a quiet visitor does not need to raise its voice to be seen? The night lengthens. The month grows softer at the edges. What we keep now matters more than what we chased. The pace slows and widens. Imagine you are walking home under a sky that keeps secrets calmly. The day has cooled to a quiet blue. Traffic thins to a hum you do not have to answer. In the west, the copper line fades to gray. Your shoulders drop because the sky has turned from glare to depth. The first star arrives without ceremony. You stop at the corner where you looked before. You lean against the same fence. You let your eyes rest in the same slice of sky. A round, faint ember finds you, the kind that seems to grow if you breathe gently and vanishes if you try too hard. It is not the rarest thing this year. It might be the thing you remember most clearly because you found it with your own attention and a minute you protected from noise. Somewhere out of sight, Three-Eye Atlas moves at its steady, unbound pace, carrying chemistry written far away. It will return to fairer angles, and instruments will speak for it with patient detail. The story will be cleaner then, less rumor and more line on a page. There is comfort in that. A truth that arrives slowly tends to stay. Swan, meanwhile, teaches a quieter comfort. Beauty can sit almost in plain view and wait for you to practice seeing. You do not need to be right on the first try. You do not need a mountaintop. You need a fence rail, a small chart, and the simple willingness to turn your body toward the dim. The sky rewards the move. If sleep is near, give it an image to hold. A soft green coin above a dark roofline, a thin straight thread leaning away into a deeper blue. The thread is the solar wind carrying ions outward. The curve that sometimes rides beside it is dust keeping a little of the comet's motion. The lantern is chemistry breathing in light. None of that needs to be said out loud when your eyes are closing. Knowing it once lets the picture linger without effort. Let the month step back and the years step forward. We will chase rare visitors again. We will practice on common ones again. Wonder is not a scarce resource, but attention often is. If you treat your attention like a small, polished instrument, you will never run out of skies to play it on. So put the folded card where your keys go. Keep the notebook with 3 lines near the door. Teach one neighbor where to rest their elbows and when to breathe. This is how quiet marvels find homes in memory, not as headlines but as evenings. Good night. The sky is patient. You can be too. When you wake, the habit will still be there, and the next clear dusk will be waiting where you left it.